My name is João, as a representative of the former Royal Studio, which was essentially a studio that I created as my first project. Well, life needs to determine why I didn't start as a freelancer and I started with the name Studio. Well, that's something that I still need to figure it out, but it worked out quite well for, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
Well, yeah, I'm Tiago, one of the 4 members, and on the contrary to what João has just told about his path or his path as a freelance designer, I never wanted to start on my own. I wanted to learn and have experience and understand how the industry works, from small studios to medium and more internationally recognized studios. So I had the opportunity to be in both of these situations. We have, even though that sometimes is really, really difficult, but we have, which is the beginning of the project, which is to share ideas, work on them, align a vision for the project. And that's why it's sometimes really, really difficult, because we all have different influences which are great to bring on the table. But sometimes it's difficult due to other things to just align on the right time and on what we think it is the best idea and formalize it that way. We are still trying to get that tuned up, but I would say that most of the times that's what happens to all of us. To come together in the beginning of the project, have a clear vision or an idea of what the project should be, and then there we go. Then we trust each other to formalize it or develop the project itself, but always based on this common idea that we've discussed it together. That's the most important thing for us.
Well, I'd say our relationship with Adobe software and Adobe Stock, it's a little bit different, but in one case and another. But at the same time, I'd say it's a matter of happiness, and at the same time, a matter of nerves, you know. It's exciting when when the programs get updated and they get the new things, and then the new things make your process feel a lot faster, but then with that comes frustration because you want it to go even faster than before, and that's a love-hate relationship that I would say. And man, these guys still, after so many years, they haven't managed to do the same things that they've done in InDesign as in Illustrator, for example. And that's the nerve part. But the love part, it's equally, we need to give credit where credit's due, and I would say that without Adobe software, we would be probably, I don't know, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, at least from a very personal standpoint of being a small studio with 4 people, with so many tools, we can embrace the number of languages that we might put ourselves in a place to dream of. And that's the cool thing about being a designer on the first place. Mentioning again, how do we share processes? We share the processes, but more than the process itself, we share the same dreams and the same goals to every project, and we allow ourselves to change languages. That's not a big issue at all. And well, Adobe allows that as a tool, as a software. Now that we're into something a little bit more open, as Adobe set the challenge also to say, well, do you want to partner up and do a series of pieces for Adobe Stock, essentially on InDesign? We said, sure, we can do that, and it's a pleasure. So we need to come up with challenges in order to make it creative. So we've started to discuss stuff like, how can we brand a feeling? Not branding in terms of a commercial branding, but how can we set an identity for a feeling? How can we do an identity for, I don't know, music? Which kind of music? And then we go back and forth and say, hey, I'd prefer it to be electronic, I'd prefer it to be rock, I'd prefer whatever. And you kind of define the client in order to have fun while doing it. The cool thing about it is hopefully we are helping someone doing something really cool with the templates, which we always consider, obviously, as well. But it's a labor of fun.
I don't know if we are, or I'm the one that should be giving advices, but following other people's advices is do not wait for nobody. It's not time to wait for nobody. Know the tools, when we talk about Adobe, learn from them, understand why they can potentiate your work, but always think ahead. Think ahead of what do you want to do, how do you want to be perceived. Know your passions, or spend time exploring them, and don't wait for nobody. I would say just go for it.
I'd also add up that don't forget about community, because collaboration is essential. And more than that, also don't forget to dance somewhere in between.
A creative is nothing without sleep. That's true, man. That's true. People got to sleep in order also to be creative.
A creative is nothing without ego, I'd say.
Okay.
As well. Hello. So we're here. Guys, we're here to talk a little bit about design, right? Let's try to make that calm and interesting as we flow by. We're all pretty much excited and bored about design, to be honest. And that's exactly what we're going to try to do here. It's to put, a little bit of perspective and try to give you the background that you really enjoy whenever we talk about design, more than doing brands, logos, systems, beautiful motion stuff. We all do that thing, but we want to really talk about a bigger and higher practice. We'll get to that in a minute. So my name is João Castro, the first one there on top of this list. There was this big name on the screens outside, João Castro, aka Royal Studio, FKA the Royal Studio. The big story here is it's not about me anymore. So I'm a graphic designer. I come from a background where I've started my independent practice as a freelancer. Later, I started teaching as well. Someone thought I was good at, teaching. I think I am quite interesting, but I'm not really sure. But then that's the moment where things start to get bored, when it's all centered around your beautiful practice as an independent studio. And something that you start to learn when you go through the years is that the people around you are so much more important than the things that you are by yourself. Although, as a designer in a studio, you are signing it as, all the things that I've done were done by me or were done by us to a client. But that's not true. You're a product of your environment, and the people around you are just as important because, you exchange thoughts, you change ideas, you gather around the same drawing table, you discuss stuff when you're having a beer and you're just talking about the general ways of how the world is so obnoxious and how the world is so exciting that you suddenly understand that all of those people are much more important than yourself. Coming from this background, there were three people that were super important for me in my life. And that's the moment where, just making this jump, I realized that the Royal Studio was fantastic, but I don't really want to talk about it because it was all about me. And from a very early moment in my life, I always had this great graphic designer following my ways, that she's a designer, an illustrator, motion designer, thinks about everything just like we all think, which is called Tiago Campeã. She's a beautiful lady.
I thought that you were going to talk about Ana Areias.
I was, but I lost my direction. So, when I was growing up, I grew up together with Ana. She's my beautiful girlfriend, and we've always shared some common studios whenever we were working around stuff, back in 2010, or maybe before that. As we kind of drifted away on our graphic design practice, we came across this beautiful idea called We Came From Space, which was a collaborative working space filled with utopias, and right there, we just gathered around with a bunch of friends who also are equally brilliant graphic designers, and that's where we met Raquel. And life does have a way to come up with layers. And in all of those layers, I realized that, I studied in one university, Ana studied in another, Raquel studied in the same university as Ana did, and she also made part of this beautiful studio called the White Studio, where she met Tiago. And Tiago was always from the scratch, because we all knew each other from back in Porto, doing different things at different universities. The thing about us is that the four of us have different ways to look at stupid, simple little things on our daily basis. So usually, whenever we are discussing a project or just walking on the streets, we are looking at different angles. Reality happens there, on the top, on the bottom, and also sometimes it also happens on the table.
Like Raquel.
Olha que nós fazemos aos catálogos quando tu não estás.
Which is Raquel just saying to me, hi Tiago, because I hate when people cut catalogs, because I religiously save them and keep them as they are developed, and she likes to tease me with her OCD thing of cutting papers just to match colors and everything. So,
so we're boring Tiago or scaring him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Here OCD went nuts on this one. So what's that? This is one side of the story, the relationship part. The professional part of that story is that, well, I started the Royal back in 2011. It gained kind of worldwide, within restraints, knowledge, where we were working with, I don't know, New York, London, Europe, some things in Turkey, other stuff in Kuwait. We were doing all of these stuff. But, you know, the internet, it does have a way to isolate you. And at the same time, we came from space, gathered with Ana, that was also working with me, but Raquel, who was working at the White Studio, who was a brilliant studio in Portugal, doing beautiful and very heroic stuff with the cultural heritage, working in winery and labels and things
well,
like
you
those.
probably know the identity, the rebrand done of the Porto, the city of Porto. So that's the studio we're talking about, where Raquel was also in it. And I was also able to do it, but yeah, basically we all tried to follow different paths. Along the way, while João and Ana were at this co-work space full of designers and photographers and people from video, Raquel was doing this for the studio and White Studio, and I decided to move on just a little before the project started. To come to Barcelona, where I spent my last 4 years working and studying, and ended up working at Mucho during these 4 years. And we conveyed, because we met along the path and during the path, and we never got detached from each other. So, and what brought us in together to move on was looking back to our visual culture and our backyard, let's say, and how curious we used to be while we were doing our all individual practices. And so from then on, having this really clash or things that we like to capture, we moved back to Porto, which is this really small city comparing to Madrid or Barcelona, but it's really intense culturally wise, and about leisure and nightlife, and people are really active. It always has been like that, but never perceived like that. But still, it is a small city and a big village. So there's still the nanny overviewing and doing what everybody else is doing. So there's this human scale that you can really walk the city without having to grab a car or whatever, but you can really feel that the locals are from there, and the ones that are not, they're all welcome, but we can feel that. So while we were apart, we always talked about this. How can we still complete our goals and ambitions about being able to work outside of the country, going abroad and having these talks like this, but still working from this very local perspective and keeping our very own nature, our roots. So that was our first Skype, where we started to talk about this, because while I was there on the Yellow Point, there was this there was this project, cultural project, pulled out by the city council, who was promoting a national initiative for all the people in Portugal to being able and participate on this competition, to have how do you say, like
scholarship?
A scholarship.
Kinda?
Yeah, kind of a scholarship. Yeah, you can call it a prize, but the thing was, you could have the opportunity to create with the city council fund, but the only restriction or requirement would be that it would be applied into the city again. So the city culturally still evolves and gets a win-win situation, because artists are getting paid and having the opportunity to do what probably otherwise they wouldn't. And this circle of the synergetic between the city and the people in the city made us have the idea to talk about the poster which we were invited to. So basically the idea to do the poster for this initiative, which we had to promote, was based on this idea of infinite. How do you control, because the project was called Creatorio, so it's a mix between creativity and territory. You probably in Spanish understood that. And the thing about it was, our main question was, how do you talk about creativity, which doesn't have so much borders, or at least you can always approach or be creative in a different direction or a different angle. How do you compare that and put that in a finite and enclosed border, which is the territory by definition? So these two antagonic ideas would have to match up on a poster for us. So our reference, as you may have seen, was Escher, because we were looking for a really, really iconic poster out in the city, which would convey this idea of movement of people going around of infinite possibilities, but still in this particular place called the city of Porto. So as our first project and approach that you saw on that Skype, we ended up by creating this outcome, which tried to capture the non-hierarchy of the information, which puts the city at the same level of the initiative, where there's no taboo talking about how much is going to be given for each of these artists, but there's also the people itself are in the same level. So both the city, the program, and the people are in the same level on this synergetic movement of a finite shape, which is this how do you say, Moebius stripe. So back next to it.
Yeah. So I think that right now we were talking about something simple and one poster that happened in the region. It was promoted all across the country, prizes, and first appliances started to drop in. People were getting into the whole thing, and it was a successful project. But we start to wonder, and that's the cool thing about it, is when does a design project really start? That's an outcome, and it worked, and people were flowing, and that's what you see in that image. But much more interestingly than the formal shape of that image is the back and forth and argument that you can really create as a designer with a city council. And the thing is, well, when you look at the information, you have a series of scholarships being awarded to the people in a country, and then you have, territory, scholarships, and a prize. So we would be kind of naive to say, well, it's the whole poster that's really working well and not the prize itself. But the really nature of the argument with the city council is, you guys, you can't really sell the city. You're not selling creativity because you're awarding a prize. The cool thing about it is that you're talking about territory, people, scholarships, creative practice, and the prize. And that's what we want to do here. More than doing a great poster, we want to level the commercial aspect and the social aspect at the same time. And this is kind of an idea of how can you, from a simple project, which is just a poster, engage in a stupid and interesting conversation, really direct, about an idea of a society and for where do you want to design to. And that's what we really strive, because formal principles should be based on an idea of society. You're not designing stuff for yourself, and you're trying to engage a public, but you're part of this fragment of a concrete utopia, right? Where a place where you want to live in, but more importantly than you, a place where you want everyone to design and to live and promote in. That's the cool part about these experiences. And now I'm going to switch into a different project, which is what happens when you don't have a target audience. It's strange and super fun at the same time when you have a project like Adobe Stock, for which we have been designing in the past, illustrations to go online, to go on mobile, to say, well, InDesign now has character styles, and now Adobe Media Encoder has a number of things that it can do in a Flash, and we've done those projects in the past, just explaining what Adobe can do in their projects. And then after that series of interesting illustrations, they asked as well, what do you want to be, do you want to partner with us and develop Adobe Stock content to be online? And we said yes, but we said yes based on an idea of framing a society. And the thing is, although we love to design stuff, it's really hard when you need to design, essentially, when you need to design templates, you know? Because when you need to design templates, there's no final purpose to them. You're giving tools to the ones that want to download them, and that's beautiful because you might be helping building good, coherent practices on how do you do a corporate report. But much more interesting, we started to feel, what if we took this idea of doing a perfect society, just doing the things that we would like to see that were better designed? And this starts with simple stuff like greeting cards, which is okay, and letterheads, which is also okay. And most of designers, maybe most of you, I don't know, I don't want to insult you, they don't do it that well. Typesetting principles, editorial principles, basic simple stuff, sometimes just get wrong. Maybe it's time, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's, I don't know.
And mainly because we're not talking especially for designers, we're talking about for people that probably are in, I don't know, corporations, and they probably know how to open an InDesign because they have to in marketing departments, but then they don't have a clue how to design something, even a Christmas gifting card or whatever, or best wishes card, which happens, and these are also people. So in a way, we're trying to also talk or approach, or Adobe is trying to approach these people, and not just designer public.
Yeah, that's the thing. But that's the thing. As a designer, you're left with something like this. Like, you want to do something great, but you don't have an audience. You want to do something great, but you don't have a target. And you want to do something great, but you don't have a brief. And you're like, what am I doing? So we started to work with this idea as a laboratory. This is something that we keep as an ongoing project over 2018. We deliver stuff to Adobe every month. Based on stuff that we want to work on, we see that it might be improved, but more than that, it's what are our frustrations on a daily basis, where we want to, engage on doing CDRs. Back in 2018, no one uses these anymore, but they can use it as part of a musical campaign or an album, where you want to, I don't know, make a coherent brief out of, I'm going to do templates for music, but more than a music, I'm going to create a whole language that could encompass these guys that would ideally create some sort of a music label, and then they need to launch an album, and then that album will probably need a program to schedule work, and then from that album will probably need a single, and that single might be silent or complex, and things just go on. They will probably need social media, they will probably need merchandising, they will probably, this is another project, but people might need posters, they might need them to be more modernist or less modernist, more deconstructed, more trendy, or, I don't know, mirrored in a way. And we take all of these principles as a way to, well, make a laboratory for us, but at the same time, think about interesting principles. So what if I want to do a really nice typesetting letterhead or a series of postcards based on an idea of not trendiness, but how can I be neutral? How could I brand silence in a way? How could I brand neutrality? How could I create an identity for a feeling? And a quirky feeling in this case. And in these principles about creating a lorem ipsum emporium, which is the brief that we have, is how do you still get to have a lot of fun and help people, and at the same time have a constructive practice based on an idea of society?
Which leads to how do we interact and engage with people. Basically, we, in this project, there's a little story because the territory about Aveiro, sorry. Okay. Sorry, should we? Okay. So, no, the thing about engaging and interact with people in this particular project has really to do with these guys that are working in the region of Aveiro, which is just down south Porto, is the city next to Porto on the south. And there's a really rich area about in terms of sea and agriculture, and is really, in terms of biology, is really rich. But these guys are trying to promote themselves into cultural, into more social activities, more events in the city. They're trying to bring all this knowledge and this nuclear core that they have, naturally speaking, to also use it for tourism initiatives and all this. What they want really is to have people to know this area, because this is like 50 kilometers from Porto, and I probably had never been in Aveiro so far in my 29 years old.
Guys, so, let's be honest. It's a brilliant swamp.
Yeah, no, because it is a swamp. Yeah. It's just a city. It's like you could call like the Portuguese Venice. That's how they call it, because it's built in this swamp. So while we were going there, we had this first. We have our field trip to try to understand how would we help this region to promote itself during these events and initiatives. And this is a work in progress still, what we are presenting today. But the cool thing about it was the cultural clash that we experienced, because 50 kilometers away from Porto, where we are used to speed and stress and all the the fuzziness of a rhythmic lifestyle. We wanted to reach to a certain place, and we asked to this old lady, which was coming from the little market with her groceries, and she told us, yeah, if you want to come with, if you want to come with me, I can lead you to the place. Okay, let's go. So we were in the car. She was by bike, and we thought, okay, probably she will put herself in the bike, but she went riding the bike all the way down. So we did the stupid figure of going in a car like 2 kilometers per hour, going back on with the lady, because she was just doing her routine. So, and from then on, we understood that the rhythm was totally different. This is the city center. Where we wanted to go was actually where the guys do these boats. These are specific fish boats or fisherman boats of that area. Actually, they're also for fishermen, but they're not to fish. Because they have like different, it's a whole thing. They have different boats for the swamp, for the sea, for just the canals, and they use these ones just to catch the seaweeds, to use for agriculture and all that. But the cool thing about this, and the particularity that they have, are these front panels, where they not only use the mosaics, but profane and routine lifestyle with messages. And And we have a couple of them. So, muévase hacia atrás, querida suegra. It's not one of the most dramatic ones, but then you go with these. And he was just chilling in the city watching these with no problem at all. And watching this same lady, watching...
Nasty, that's nasty.
That's kind of, no, that's not the worst because we're trying to be kind of polite here. But the thing about this is that now you relate the rhythm of this old lady with the humorous and hilarious boats that they have in this region. You start to define an identity in this area. So all these boats are in the city and are done by these two guys. The guy that paints the boats and the guy who actually draw these panels. And he's a really nice guy, full of stories, amazing stories, because all these panels that we saw there are just clicks that he brought from his daily routines. And he had this particularity that I never try to be rude. I put the naughtiness on people's minds. Like, I try to do this exercise, so it's never my fault. It's like, it's your dirty mind, let's say. So while we were having this field trip, having these tons of hours talking to them and listening to these stories, we understood that there are two different things. So here you see the sea boats, which are different from the panel ones, the other ones with the colorful panels. And those ones really talked how the city talked. But here they were just signing them as the name of the boats. And for the project that we are developing, we needed these two things. If we need a campaign just to promote a cultural event because, I don't know, JR is coming to Aveiro, which we would love to, we would need a language, a visual language that could sign an initiative, but also talk with it. So, because we have a lot of different moments where the mayor just wants to say this, or we have a cultural event where it needs to speak out to the people. So, during all this research, we understood that that was the way they talk, and this could be the way they signed. And because they were done, all of the boats in this area are done by this man on the right side that we saw. And from this little 5 that he had on his briefcase, because it's really particular, and we try to develop a system or a custom typeface that could sign all these initiatives. First, then, or before of working with copy, or before of actually speaking out with these campaigns. So we, together with a French graphic designer that was doing an internship with us at the time, we started to think how can we develop a system out of that, out of those little numbers, and how can we do a complete alphabet. So we end up creating these numbers, a lot of alternates, because we would have to use them just in case that there is some foreign artist or musician, right? We would have to complement all this, complete all this, all these circumstances. And alternates may say that we have a narrow, not narrow, but how do you say this? Like the quirky or the swash, just with the angle, or just a curved swash. And when you want to just use ligatures with the RNI, and how can we still keep the reminiscence of that 5? So here is represented in exclamation points, and we just started to try some names from people from Brief Festival and other names that we thought that could, or names or products that we thought that could fit this typeface well, that could compose right. So, and we're still...
That's for the after party.
Still trying to finish some details on this type to be able to sign all these campaigns and initiatives.
Really nice. How many hours did you sleep?
So if you want to follow the guy, here you have his Instagram. Thanks, Theo, for the help. And this, having this project aside of another project that we're talk to you about, more than a project, like a story, which is another particular story, that we had the opportunity to deal was how can we interact with people, but also how can we respect what was done, and even though that we are doing it today and interacting with it today. And this leads us to this, to how to there and why they're in future generations. For the National Printing House just invited us, or invited some curators over Porto to resume 250 years of their national printing objects and materials. So when they talked about this to the curators, and they proposed it to them, the curators were really happy. Let's go for it. It's going to be really amazing because we have tons of material that we can explore, and let's just start to work on it for the exhibition. This was like a 3 months period. And during all these meetings, how are we going to import this Heidelberg? How are we going to bring this machine over from the south of Portugal to Porto? Because all this exhibition that they wanted to do was based there. So all the material that we had in Portugal had to come up somehow. But one thing that they never thought was the catalog. And they say, okay, what about the catalog? And the curators were like, what catalog? Well, the catalog of the exhibition, you know, like, if there's an exhibition, there must be a catalog. No catalog, no exhibition. But they were saying this 1 month prior to the inauguration, to the opening, which is also a Portuguese thing, I must say. Like, if you cannot follow rules, just improvise and deal with it. So they approached us, the curators. Look, we have a thing going on here. Like, we have 1 month to design a book for this exhibition. And we're like, okay, what is this exhibition about? About 250 years of the National Printing House. And we say, whoa, but I'm just 29. I just turned 29. Okay, there was a big commitment, and there was a really big responsibility on your shoulders back then, and still is. And we're like, okay, we can see this as a big responsibility because we are trying to do a book like this, or at least as good as this Bible was back then, with 250 years a part of it. But we also have an opportunity to create or craft a book that could be perceived with that value from 250 years on. And that duality between the big responsibility of having to mark a period over there, but also to have the opportunity to contribute to that report of materials really interests us. So we said, yes, let's go for it. But the thing about it is that when we started to design, or wanted to design the books, we asked, where's the content? oh, yeah, but the thing is that there is no content still. And we're like, how? How the fuck there's no content 1 month from now on? Yeah, we need to produce the content. And say, okay, wait, so we're designing, or do we still need to even photograph the content? Yeah, that's exactly it. We need to photograph all the things that are coming on. So we started designing and continued to art direct and did photographic direction on all the contents. And we were still like, how is this going to be perceived? So as we were doing the content, or shooting the content, and there's beautiful material from the 250 years, from etching to books to the how do you say?
The materials themselves.
The materials, yeah, but the utensils.
Yeah.
Well, and all the typographic drawers and matrices, all the letter sets, all the letter sets here from really long time ago to just things that are just now developed, like 10 years ago or something like that. So we were really having a great fun while doing this documentation. But still, we didn't know how to do it because we started to understand how to do this, how to approach this book by being really influenced by all these materials. So, but because the only thing that we really knew from day one is that the book must smell like this. Must smell like ink, must smell like metal, must feel like it, must be really mechanical in that sense, from one side, because we're talking about a book that wants to talk about the process of making books, from paper until all the printing techniques. So we had to come up with an idea of it, and the main idea for it came out of this shelf, or drawers, where we schemed up or structured, used to structure the book on the seven subjects that we were going to talk, from paper, typographic school, etching, silk screening, lithography, and so on. But still, we were just art directing it, and the contents that weren't written, weren't done. So, as we were doing a placeholder book of 250 years of printing house, we started to work on references that we had documented, other references that could also have been part of the process, and started to think about influences, because during the typographic school in Portugal, there was really a really French influence on the printing house. So typefaces like Century School Book, Clarendon's were really an influence back a certain period, which we decided to take on from a Century School book. How can we tell that without having to use the school book, but trying to use a typeface from production type, in this case, Minotaur, that was influenced also by that period, but it's from today. It's contemporary.
I think it's because the guy is French. Nah, I was just wondering. Process Type Foundry, the guy that did this is French. Anyway.
Yeah. No. But the thing is, as we were moving on this, okay, is this the correct typeface? Is this the correct use of it? No, because we were having this indecisions. As we were doing this, we were also thinking, yeah, but the book is really about this mechanical culture. So all the letter sets that we showed should appear somehow, and we should create a shelf book. So let's use this influence for the book. And João was saying, okay, let's use this. I was saying, let's use that. And we're having all these indecisions. And we finally conveyed in the idea that of all the typefaces they were using, it wouldn't be be cool just to, or it wouldn't be honest just to use from a certain period, but from all the research that we did, it wasn't never about the typeface itself, but just how we were using it. So we decided to have another approach on the same typeface. So we also went back and forth in the design process.
May I talk a little bit about that back and forth?
Yeah.
Well, we have this silly rule at the studio, because we were talking about honesty, and that's something really important.
Yeah.
Honesty to the project, to the brief, to the history, to the goals, and to, well, to very egotistical formal approaches of I like or I don't like, which are also equally valid when you're this coherent as we are, right? And the thing here was, we have this rule at the studio where you can show a red card and say, however this project is going, I don't identify with it, and within the four of us, and someone might throw the towel and say, if we're doing it like this, the project doesn't come out. And this was kind of a moment like those, when we were in the middle of some indecisions of going with letter set characters, Gothic letters, trade Gothics, going to century school books, whatever. The discussion was, do we want to reinterpret history, or do we want to reinterpret history from, you know, a design point of view, which is in the part of the books of the, you know, the research, or do we want to talk about history in terms of monotype, intertype, the machines, the presses, and etc. And there was this indecision. But then someone threw in a red card. I don't really remember who, but threw in a red card. And that red card was in the form of the letters that we see in the red, which is, okay, we did this massive study about the typefaces and the type principles and the construction of the books. And we've come to the conclusions that the typefaces on the left illustrate clearly and are the typefaces that really come back to that history and period. And we know that we want to be contemporary, but that Gothic part, the trade Gothics that we were seeing a moment ago, they really don't speak about that. And that's if we were to be doing a reinterpretation in a classical kind of nostalgical book, we would be using the ones in the left, and that's what we don't want to do. So what are we going to do, to be honest? And that's the thing.
Well, I don't know, and more than just discussing about the typeface, because the book is much more than that. Being honest to this process and being honest to what we are trying to document here. And while these guys were going, the curators were going back and forth with the text and the contents, we were like, okay, so now we're editing, co-editing the things with you. So we envision this, and we suggest that you could edit this book this way. Would you follow? Okay, let's follow this. So they ended up following it, and while they were doing it, we were like, okay, we need to add narrative in here. As I was speaking about the need of talking about the paper and the craft, the smell, the materials, we started to looking to really precise photos and macros of all these objects to try to break in as doing a little teasing on the initial part of the book before you even know what we are trying to talk, before the first page with the title. So you could have as like in a movie. So you would have like a glimpse of the smells and what is going on as a flashback, and then you have that intro. You boom ended up on the book itself, and we not only did that documenting wise, but also on the techniques, on the production, on the printing techniques, because we really wanted to feel metal and mechanical and industrial. So with all those influences, this one's the big result, or our result, where we in a way we try to document the type and the letter pressing processes. Where from binding we got those influences while they were doing the guards of the book and the laterals of it, from the shifting and the different materials that they were used, until these intros that really marked the beginning of the book itself. So it's after that we start to see the structure of these 7 shelves, and also always in black on metal, on silver in this case, And then with little reminiscences of how did they would count the lines back then, because they did the 10, 15, 20, 25 lines, all that was there, but trying to still look at it as done today, and not a book trying to resemble the past. And the exhibition is still on. I invite you all to go there, because we also had the opportunity to do the exhibition and communication design for them, and it will be until November. So it is a nice opportunity if you happen to be in Porto, just to jump by it to House of Design, and try to learn about and have this testimonial of it, because the exhibition is really interactive in that sense. So
that leads us to promote empathy, which is, as you can imagine, doing a whole book, not a book, you know, doing a whole movie, which is you need to tell a story, and the book needs to have timings and narratives so that you can draw in, drop out, feel the metal, feel the ink in your fingers. Not the ink of the book, but the feeling of having ink in your fingers. That goes from, you know, making a big intro to making a whole story and then making a flashback. That's still about a movie, and we tend to think about movies and books just the same, where you need to have a coherent narrative flow with ups and downs, excitements, and etc. Just as in a process, you can imagine the amount of curse words, the amount of nerves, and the fuck yous that we've said to the editors, and vice versa, in order to pull this thing out in 1 month, which is kind of crazy, but it's kind of cool. And that's what gets us going. But sometimes we need to remember to promote empathy, because this can leave you in a very interesting space, but in a space where it doesn't really respect everyone's feelings. Now, I'd love to throw in another extra 2 projects, but we are really running out of time. But talking about empathy in a very quick way, I'm going to give you a glimpse of 2 projects that also focus on community, that also embrace this time contemporary projects in opposition to 215 years of the Printing National Press. We're here looking at a flashback of the latest, 2 years in the communication in the city of Porto by other designers. And we had an opportunity to make another exhibition talking about the burst of rock, the burst of electro music within the latest six decades of music coming out of Porto, and that comes with electro, rock, pop rock, whatever. It comes with a massive explosion of stuff. Well, talking about all of these things, we need to come up with systems that also might respect the research that one does, but also interacts directly with the public with some sort of boom and flash and exaggeration. Say, everything that you've heard in the past that make your persona present now, it's in an exhibition about music. And these other parts of one exhibition, this is a story that I'd love to tell you, but I'm not, which ends up with being able to have a massive ear in the streets of Porto and going all around the country, inviting you to explore the fields of music and explore all of these names that all of you know, not you because you're Spanish, but well, if you're Portuguese, you knew all of these names, and enjoy it, and just be happy again, because someone is looking for that. And this is to say that while we are being kind of sarcastic and ironic, we're really talking about being a designer. That's when we started. Remember, 40 or 50 minutes ago, we're talking about what is it that it means to be a designer. And in a way, it means that we are wicked and not innocent at all. And that might allow you to connect yourself to others, and also it might allow you to inspire others and play again with yourself and with several situations. Now, I'm really going to jump this project. Just showing you things.
O que eu tô fazendo, né? Tem calma, mano. Tem calma. So the thing about this is, and just to finish it, because while we are talking about this hospital club, which is an event that promotes creativity and awards people, private club in London, we were always talking. We were invited to do the exhibition, and we were like, okay, but what is it about you or is it about the others? What does it mean to be awarded? And the very non-innocent thing about here is that even though that you're kind of inspired by others, and others are inspired by you in the moment that you come up, there's always this ego thing that wants. It's part of our really nature and part of our area and field, creative field. So by doing these inhales and exhales, these inflates and inflates, we're talking always about how can I inspire and be, or how can I inhale and be inspired, but also as a subliminal message, how can I be, how big is my ego, or how it isn't. So there is this little subliminal messages that we'd like to add, even though that they're not part of the project at all, in terms of the client's brief. And as this event of this series, this night had like 12 categories that we just saw, like 4 or 5. The event was based on 12 categories, not a big intro of the event, and then the 12 categories are like here. So because the main event is this. So in order to do that, and without any big resources rather than just these that we did, we ended up creating an intro for the event. We'll just appetize and give sneak peeks of this idea of inflate and be inspired and inspire others.
All right.